All right. Well, good evening. Here we are for our last webinar on this topic of human sexuality in the church. We'll take a week off and come back March 14th for another webinar series on fasting from things during Lent. What's the history of Lent, and why do we give up things, and what should we give up and put in its place? It's going to be interesting, and you don't want to miss it. Another reminder to start asking us questions by clicking the question button below us so we can tackle those when we're done sharing our information. And that's only going to be on Crowdcast. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you got to log in to Crowdcast. That's how we're seeing the questions. And click on the follow button if you want to be notified. It's over here. Yeah, if you want to be notified and reminded when our Lenten webinar begins.
All right, so I want to begin with a trigger warning. If you have ever been the victim of sexual abuse or assault as a minor or as an adult, this might be a difficult webinar for you, so please don't watch it unless you have a support network, someone to reach out to if necessary. All right, so we're going to start by talking about the Me Too movement, which is important because for hundreds, if not thousands of years, women's bodies have been objectified, owned, and assaulted by those trying to exert power or dominance. So even today, they estimate that 1 in 4 women will be assaulted in their lifetime. And I was assaulted when I was 17. So this is a really personal issue for me as well. Tarana Burke started using the phrase Me Too as early as 2006. And it came back again in the wake of the Weinstein scandal when Alyssa Milano tweeted it in 2017. So 4.7 million people in 12 million posts within the first 24 hours of Alyssa Milano using this hashtag used it themselves to describe their own experiences. I mean, that's huge. So we need to see the Me Too movement that has had a steady presence in the film and music industry extend to the church as well. So just a month after Alyssa Milano used the Me Too hashtag, there was another hashtag called Church Too that was introduced. And in January of 2018, another one, Silence is Not Spiritual, was used to call out how churches handle sexual abuse.
Yeah, I've witnessed women being treated very differently than men. Going through the process of being ordained as pastors, they asked me questions relevant to ordination. And with the same interviewing team, Rachel was asked how she was going to handle kids and ministry. Not me. Why didn't they ask me that? Why only ask Rachel? We left the West Ohio conference because we returned from the Peace Corps. They encouraged Rachel to go into Christian ministry so that she could support me in my ministry. I didn't like that, and she didn't like that because I knew that she was called into ordained ministry. And I thought that was the most ridiculous suggestion imaginable.
He's right. So from the first initial step into the ordination process, and I have to say, I mean, I feel blessed to at least be in a denomination that does ordain women because there are not too many of those out there. But from my very first step until I was fully ordained 8 years later, I faced opposition, maybe because I'm an assertive vocal leader, which would make me a stellar candidate for ministry if I were a man. But as a woman, people had concerns. At first, I was a little intimidated to stand up for myself because I didn't want to come across as defensive or combative. But I learned how to use my womanhood and motherhood as a shield by the end of my process. So one of my favorite stories about not necessarily sexual abuse, but just discrimination in the church and how people jump to assumptions and don't even realize it, that they're mistreating women. So I was sitting before the Board of Ordained Ministry, and there was this one committee that had to determine whether or not I had appropriate self-care. And the board asked me how on earth I could prove I had healthy self-care when I had a 2-year-old and an infant and was planting a church. You know, I'm a young mother. And I couldn't move forward in the process unless I could prove that I was properly taking care of myself. My husband wasn't asked that question, but my response to the board of all predominantly males was, Well, my infant daughter has refused a bottle, no matter how hard I've tried. So that means I am the only source of life she has right now through nursing, and my daughter will starve to death and die if I'm not rested, hydrated, and calm enough to produce enough milk to feed her. I have to sit down every few hours, take a break from work to hold my beautiful baby girl. Have you seen my chubby little girl? She is doing just fine. And I highly doubt that any of you are sustaining life with your self-care in a way that can be visibly seen. So don't question me. I'm doing just fine. Thank you. The board approved me for ministry.
Mic drop. I'll never forget being in the beginning of our ministry when she came back from a meeting and told me about this young man who was mistreating her and kind of saying some things that I didn't like. And I wanted to go after him. So when I happened to run into him at a mission event, I shook his hand really hard for an awkwardly long time, just to let him know I was unhappy. And so later when I told Rachel about what I had done, feeling all proud and I'm the man, I'm your man, she told me not to do that ever again, that she had to fight her own battles. So for me, in the Me Too movement, I learned that the best thing for me to do as a man, as a husband who wants to protect my wife and to go after those who hurt her or even my daughter or anybody like that is to let her, my wife, fight her battles with these people. Because unless she asked me to step in and the best thing for me to do is to be me, a strong, confident man who's not threatened or intimidated at all by being married to a strong, confident, and leader woman. When people meet Rachel, they wonder what kind of mouse of a man that she married. We've been around that. They're like, okay, what's this little guy going to be like? And when I come in the door, all 6'3", 230 pounds of all of me, all Appalachian American me, they realize nobody pushes me around, and that changes their perception of a woman in leadership. A lot of times people think that strong women have to have doormats of a husband or a boyfriend. And I think strong women have to have strong husbands because like attracts like.
So for me, I want to find my own way to address hurdles that come because of my gender. But there are times when men or women speaking up for the person being attacked or assaulted is crucial. Mm-hmm. Proverbs 31:8 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed." So the more comfortable we become with naming sexism, gender bias in our culture, in our churches, the less power these evils have over us. And it doesn't have to be done in a vindictive way. You can say, wow, that sure sounded like a sexist remark. Or I wonder why you think it's okay to talk to someone like that.
Wow, you're being a white male, aren't you? That's what I get said.
You say that, yeah.
No, you tell me.
Okay,
that.
And the more influence and age you have under your belt, the more you need to speak the truth to power. So I was just reading the news today and saw a story about an actress that stepped out of a contract to do an animated film because the animation chief she would be working with had a record of mistreating women for decades. This actress has enough fame and enough power and fortune that she can speak up for women who might feel trapped, like they have to work for a man like this. And so hopefully her decision will enact change and protect more women. Something else that helped me was taking a self-defense class after being a victim of sexual assault. So I felt empowered to stand up if my body was threatened in any way. So look around, find a course to take, invite some friends to join you. I know if you're here local in Hampton Roads, Brett Thompson has done courses for us at the church and for realtors with his jiu-jitsu experience. So opportunities are out there, really great ones.
All right, so we're going to move from the Me Too movement, which is a sexuality issue about how men, and it's usually men, 99.9% of the time, men mistreating women. We must see everybody as created in the image of God. If we see everybody that way, we must treat them with that love and that respect, and to treat women Less than that, which is what the Me Too movement is really all about, is not what God wants for us. But as fallen and sinful human beings, we distort all sorts of things, how we treat women and how some people can treat children. The Catholic Church and the Baptist churches are getting a lot of press these days about sexual abuse in the church inflicted by spiritual leaders. Within the last week, CBS reported that over 2,600 priests, 2,600 priests and church workers over the past few decades have abuse allegations. But this abuse isn't just happening in the Catholic and the Baptist church. It's happening in all churches, all denominations, at all levels of authority. Mainly, it's in the local church, and later on, the pastor of the local church rises to a higher authority, and that's when they're being reported, and that's why you'll have bishops and higher-ranking people brought up on sex abuse charges. It's happening in the church offices. It's happening in youth groups. It's happening in the choir and convents with nuns, and it's happening to women, men, and children.
When I hear stories about nuns being raped, giving birth to the children of priests, or I read about pastors and priests molesting children, and those kids have to carry that shame and that pain their entire lives, my heart just breaks. You know, as a survivor of sexual assault, I needed counseling to heal and have a healthy view of my own sexuality, but my assault wasn't affiliated with the church at all. For those who are victimized in the house of God, they have to heal not just physically and emotionally, but spiritually as well. Because how could a good God allow such a horrible thing to happen in God's house? The short answer is we don't know why God allows it. We do know God isn't the source of this horrific evil. People, broken and evil people, use their power over others to harm them, and they are not thinking of their victims, only their need and their illness. Now, I'm not a trained counselor who can explain why these serial assaulters continue to commit the crimes, but we want to take some time to talk about how churches and pastors can protect themselves from sexual abuse and misconduct in the church.
Child molesters, that's one thing that is, for me, is just hard to stomach and just put my mind around. But they are also children of God, no matter how difficult or angry I might be at them and difficult to say, but they are children of God, and they need to be forgiven and loved, but they also must never be a child ever again, period.
Keep them safe in the church.
Keep them, yes, safe in the church. To protect children and to help them with their demons. That's why they should never be around them. Those boundaries have to be there. We have safe sanctuaries and background checks for all staff and volunteers with children to help ensure the safety of all children. And if you're not doing that in your local church, you have to do that. I don't care if Great Aunt Edna is taking care of the kids. If she is in the nursery and you're going to take care of the kids and one-on-one with them, she has to have a background check. Now, when it comes to sexual abuse between adults in the church, I think you first have to have a realistic understanding of yourself, not an inflated view or think that you're without fault or Superman or Superwoman. You have to have a realistic understanding of yourself, you as a human being. The fact is that as a human being, as a sexual human being, you're going to find yourself attracted to other people. That's human nature and that's biology. But just because you are attracted to someone doesn't mean you have to act on it. In fact, if you find yourself attracted to someone, you have to set up boundaries when it comes to that particular person. Don't be alone with them. Don't try to hug them or take them out for breakfast or lunch or meet with them all the time on a consistent basis. Keep it strictly professional. Your interactions are strictly professional. And you can have a professional relationship as a pastor with a parishioner. You can pray with someone you are attracted to, but you don't have to hold their hand or stare in their eyes or be behind locked doors.
Yeah. I remember during a sexual ethics training that we took at seminary and in 2 trainings that we've had since in the United Methodist Church, they talk about what leads pastors to sexual indiscretion in the church. And there are a few factors, right? Newsweek had an article in November of 2017 that shared research from MIT showing that when we are stressed out, we make riskier, perhaps stupider decisions. So you're just not thinking straight. So cheating on your wife with the church secretary sounded like a horrible idea on your first day there, but 5 years later, with stress at home, with meetings, with kids, with committees, with pastoral care, it doesn't seem that crazy anymore.
You can rationalize your thing, to do anything.
Yeah, so ministry can be an isolating place. If you don't have a support network, you can find yourself crumbling pretty quickly. If you're in any kind of high-risk job where you don't really feel like you have people to talk to, you can fall victim in these same ways. Also, this is unfortunate, but true. Pastors can have an overinflated sense of their spiritual strength, so they don't think they need commonplace boundaries like not meeting someone of the opposite sex in private, right? You don't, like, if no one is at the church, I'm not going to meet someone of the opposite sex there for counseling, even if there is a window in the door. If there's no one else in the church, we'll go to a coffee shop or take a walk, be out in public somewhere. Or, everyone should put firewalls on your computer against porn, or don't text or call a parishioner about personal issues on a daily basis when you have a spouse or a mentor or a counselor to turn to for advice. We blur lines pretty quickly and we find ourselves in danger. Anyone can, right? So Brandon and I have always shared our calendars with each other so we know who's meeting with whom, when, and where. And if either of us picks up on some inappropriate feelings coming towards our spouse from a church member, we set up tighter boundaries. And in some cases, I think just once or twice, we've had to lovingly confront a person. I know you're going through a really difficult time, a really difficult divorce. We want to be here for you. We love you and care about you. If it's a woman, then I'll offer to counsel the woman. If it's a man, then Brandon will offer to counsel the man, just to help make sure that this person in this emotional, vulnerable state doesn't read into the concern of a pastor.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we've covered a lot of territory here, and now we want to take some of your questions. So let's see what we have. And
what does the Book of Discipline have to say about sexual indiscretions for pastors? Ooh, Lauren, that's a great question. So you can read through the Book of Discipline. There's a policy in place. If you think that your pastor has overstepped their bounds sexually, then you would report it to staff parish and or the district superintendent. And then there is a clear, fair system whereby, they gather evidence, see if this is actually a valid claim. If so, then depending on what they've done, looking at porn on a church office computer or sleeping with the secretary, if there's an affair that has happened, then the pastor
just hitting on
or sexual harassment,
sexual harassment. Yeah.
There's there have been Methodist pastors that go to jail too. You can be kicked out of the church and depending on what you've done, imprisoned, and then it just causes so much harm for the whole community.
Yeah.
But it's a fair process. So yes, there are penalties and punishments, and they do require every 4 years we take a sexual ethics training just to make sure we know what's appropriate and what's not. They even advise in the training that if you're a single pastor, you're not married, that you don't date anyone from your congregation either, because you're their pastor and not their boyfriend or girlfriend, which can make it really hard and put a lot of pressure on single clergy as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would just say contact the chair of SPRC first, and also the district superintendent, and make sure you file an official complaint, official report for sexual assault, abuse, inappropriate behavior. And that is that you can be have your I'm pretty sure if our DS Wayne is watching us tonight, he'll know. I think you can be have your ordination removed for those offenses.
Mm-hmm.
We got another question up here.
Ask us anything. There was a delegate at General Conference who alluded to sexism being a reason female being promoted to higher levels of the UMC clergy. What is the church actively doing to investigate this or change it? Ha ha ha! Yep, that would be pretty true. I mean, it is hard statistically for women to, there are not as many females leading large churches in any conference as men.
And the pay for women is grossly unproportionate to men.
Yep.
For also minorities is grossly unproportionate to white males.
Yeah. So, and the Methodist Church they realize it's a problem. There for women specifically, there's a group called the Committee COSGRO that does research every year and investigates pay and how many women are being promoted. So I know in the Virginia conference, they are more actively trying to give women equal opportunities, but they still have a ways to go. Slowly and steadily, they're working towards it. Our Bishop Lewis is really committed to that. Being an African-American female, she knows and has lived that journey herself. So she's been a really positive influence on our conference. But I can post when we're done, I'll put other books and resources you can read about how this is a problem for women. And, you know, when I was doing my internship at Duke, there was a male mentor supervisor over me that was being inappropriate. Like when we first met, he put his hand on my upper thigh and I went to report it and I was told, oh, honey, don't start problems now. Like just let him be, because you don't want to be known as that whistleblower before you even begin your ministry. And so something that we can all do at the church is listen and take those reports seriously.
Blow the whistle.
So I took care of the problem myself. You know, I told him I'd taken my self-defense classes and could kill him 30 different ways with whatever was in my purse if he felt the need to touch my body like that again. And he didn't. And so it was I survived that experience, but we need to do a better job in the church of really listening to people's stories and seeing if they're true and honest, but also being empathetic with the pain that this has caused for so many people who have been mistreated. It's an ongoing issue. Any other questions? Let me pull it up. I don't see any popping up now. We still have 8 minutes, but if you have any questions that come up between now and the start of our Lenten series, you can go ahead and post those. We'll try to be better about doing polls so that you can engage even prior to the start of our next Crowdcast webinar. But we hope this has been helpful for you. It's been hard some weeks to I don't know, address these issues honestly, but we hope it's been helpful and we're honored to have been a part of journeying through sexuality in the church together. What do you think? Yeah. Any final thoughts or words?
I just want to thank everybody for being understanding me being away last week, being with my family at the passing of my father. Really wanted to be there to talk about homosexuality, especially in the church, especially leading up to General Conference's decision on Tuesday. I think Rachel and I are very disappointed in the decision. We really wish the one church plan would have passed. So we are just...
I know at the gathering, we'll be talking about it briefly on Sunday, you know, what's next for us moving forward. But the truth is God is still on the throne. The kingdom of God is still being built here on earth by incredible disciples trying to love and be the light of Christ in a world that feels a lot darker some days than on others. So thank you guys for being our light in this process. And we will get through this together. So yeah, more updates coming about the whole General Conference thing. So make sure you see the bishop's live stream on Monday morning with her update.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, have a wonderful evening, guys. Thank you for everything.
Yeah.
And
again, don't next week we will take a week off. Rachel is doing a speaking in Orlando, and I am home with the kids. So pizza delivery.
You're so bad. We will survive.
Dodgeball tag with the kids because mom's gone.
So we will catch you back here in 2 weeks. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah.